Okay, so transformation economics, tips and short stories, 10 minutes, go. Whew. Luckily, I'm only a bush economist rather than a real economist, so 10 minutes should just about cover it. So I'm going to stick to 2 tips and 2 short stories so you can gauge exactly how long I'm going to be going for, and I'm going to try very hard to get there before the bell. Now, caveat on this first one, this won't apply to anybody's business in this room, but you will talk to companies, clients and customers of yours who might be in this situation. That terrific slide, well, one of many terrific slides from Didier about various industry verticals and where they sit in mastery to all of that good stuff. Very similar to Deloitte's, quick plug for them, their short fuse Big Bang slide, if you're familiar with that. So if you're talking with people who don't sort of get this stuff, so this is people well outside this room, here's one thing that you can try and use with them. This dates back to 1979, well before the internet was ever at mass level, but it stood the test of time. Michael Porter's very well-known 5 forces. Still taught today in MBA school. I check this on a regular basis, so people go, oh, you old dinosaur, it's rubbish. Fortunately, Porter then spells this out a little bit more into specific aspects of how you can go about using this as a tool to test your industry. Kim Williams, for those of you who are lucky enough to hear him this morning, absolutely outstanding. That whole thing about power shift from producers to consumers is very much about what's down in the bottom right-hand corner here as we look at it. So all of this stuff about buyer has full information. So that bottom right one there. So just to put that in context, you know, you could now walk out of here to try and find some lunch if you've got a rumbly tummy. Dare say a few of you have. But you, instead of just taking a punt on the local closest cafe, you can go to TripAdvisor or Urban Spoon or any other number of sources to make an informed judgment. You just couldn't do that when this stuff first came around. So overlay this thing with the broad impact of where digital technology has and is making an impact on the changes of how industries work from an economic point of view, and that can be a very scary thing to look at. So feel free, take a picture. It's not my IP, it's Michael Porter's. Just I put these red bands around it. They will differ a little bit from industry to industry, but if somebody ever says to you, no, we're not subject to all of that stuff, well, just try and step them through this thinking about what technology now does. So that's my first tip. Second one, very closely related to that, is how does technology, through another lens, change industry economics? Well, in the old days of IT, people used to say, well, if you want something, pick 2 out of 3, speed, time, functionality. Any old IT people in the room? Luckily, I can't see you, so you can nod freely. But that's what they used to say, pick 2 from 3. You can't have 3. Well, if you look at what technology does now, it completely disrupts things around cost, reach, simplicity, speed, all of those things. I'm not going to step through any particular industry examples, but if you were to take a combination of that and looking at Porter and step through these industries, so just so we're clear from the top right, that's publishing, travel, retail, photography, recorded music, all of which are now radically different to how they were some years ago. It's a combination of those things at the top that allow people to come in and disrupt the industry. Some that we're seeing underway at the moment, fintech. It's the buzzy thing of the moment, isn't it? So not just Bitcoin, but all of that stuff, top right hand there. Interesting Stone and Chalk and these other fintech accelerators. Westpac's got Reinventure, its own fund. It's an interesting space. A lot of stuff going on. One of the things with Kim I'm absolutely on board with is this notion of wellness and the Department of Sick rather than health. But with the aging of the population, we literally have no choice but to change the way that we think about health. I did a big presentation to a well-known company that's been mentioned a few times this morning, a couple of years ago, pitching health and stuff they could do in health. And I reread my presentation from there. It's 2.5 years ago. But even then, Jawbones, which were generally the brand that people knew, fit bands, call them what you will, were really you just were seeing the first few of them. They're becoming more prevalent, but the whole notion of wearable technology and smart toilets and smart fridges and all that good stuff, fortunately, we will see a shift away from capital-centric, labour-centric hospitals, nurses, doctors, surgeries to self-directed wellness centred in the home. We have to. We literally cannot afford to continue healthcare delivery in the way it's historically happened. There you go, 2 tips. Short story number 1, Tale of Two Old Companies. So this company was a British printing company founded in 1820. They chugged along, they had millions and millions of dollars invested in those enormous German printing machines, clunking out books and magazines and whatever else. As a private company in 1997, so think back again, well before the internet was really pervasive in everything, these guys took what must have been a really brave, I think, decision at that time that they were going to sell all of that printing capital, while it was still worth some money, and redefine themselves as a media distribution company. So this is not just now going to be about a message on a piece of paper. We will now take any piece of content and distribute it to the world, one-to-one, one-to-many, whatever you like. That's how we will define ourselves as a business. They are a billion-dollar-plus company now. They've absolutely gone from strength to strength. They've had some changes of ownership, but incredibly far-sighted decision. The comparative company to them was founded in 1888, very similar old company. US stock-listed company, hit their peak, ironically, Valentine's Day, 1997, that very same year. I dare say some of you will all have guessed who this comparator is, and I wish it was someone else, because these poor guys get bashed around all the time for these examples, but it is Kodak. And I think probably most of you will know that Kodak did actually invent digital photography. So they weren't Luddites. They weren't railing against this thing, but what they got locked into was not believing that their business model would profoundly need to change. So they went, digital photography, terrific. People will take many, many more photographs. What they didn't accept, probably, I don't know exactly, but internal groupthink or inertia or whatever it may have been, was that they didn't realise that the percentage of those photographs that then got printed would drop to a tiny fraction of 1%, and their business model was all geared around this invested capital of photo processing machines in booths and shops and things all over the world. So the challenge with them was they didn't think the unthinkable about their existing business model and think about then how do we redeploy our capital. The second example I'm going to give to you, I'm giving one because it's an Australian success story, and it's not Atlassian. If for no other reason, they get lots of publicity and they're a great company, but I struggle still to stand here and give you the Atlassian elevator pitch, quite frankly. But this is a really simple business, because one of the questions I get asked a lot is, can you give us an example of a company that has totally reinvented itself from being an old world bricks and mortar type of business to a really genuinely digital one that I can recognise? And this company, they're Australia's largest listed e-commerce company. They only listed certainly within the last 12 months. They've got about $500 million in sales, database of 6 million people. They started life in 1989, so not quite the same level of heritage as the other two companies, but still well before the internet was pervasive for how we do business. And they started business in an old warehouse in Lakemba with 15 people. And they were an old-style auction house. Anyone know who I'm talking about? Graze Online, yes. So that's the brands that they currently work through. So I love the story of Graze Online because it's a simple one that people can get. I'm not going to go through the whole story of how they got from there to where they are today, but they are essentially now an online-only business. They've got a great big warehouse out near the Olympic Stadium, but they sell a lot of stuff. Very well known for wine. I dare say one or two of you have bought some wine from them in the past. I bought half a pallet from them once, but that's another story that you can ask me about over cocktails this evening if you really choose to. This is their story. I'm not going to go through it in detail. I'm assuming the slides will be available, but let me step aside, take a photo if you want to. But I just like Graze because it's a really clear, easy to understand example of a company that went from that really old style to fully digital today. I've beaten the bell. Thank you very much. We'll have a chat with Bridget and others.